Hello and welcome to CERAWEEK On Demand 2013. With me today is Mr. Steve Goodman, the North Energy Practice Leader of Egon Zehnder, who's talking today about CEOs in energy and succession planning. Mr. Goodman, I think it's the second part of that title which I actually find quite fascinating, succession planning. Tell us a bit what brings you to CERAWEEK in that regard, and what are you learning here in that regard?
Oh, fantastic. We've had the opportunity over the last couple of years to partner with CERA in terms of trying to identify the potential relative to future leaders within the energy space. Mm-hmm. So this is our second year in terms of working with you all.
Now I understand that Egon Zehnder has carried out some research into upstream companies and oil service companies. You found some interesting statistics regarding CEOs and energy succession. What have you found?
You know, it is interesting, right? Over the last 3 years, we looked at publicly traded companies that have revenues greater than $1 billion. And of those companies that we identified, roughly 35% of the CEOs changed within that 3-year period. So, you would think that there is a substantial change happening. But at the same time, if you think about that, of those companies that changed CEOs, 75% of those companies appointed internal successors, which would suggest then that there is a strong supply of quality leaders within these organizations. However, if you start to peel back the onion just a little bit, what you start to see then is that as we've surveyed various companies, including many of these, roughly 15% of these companies, quite frankly, only 15% have quality succession plans in place today.
So that suggests then that there's a definite need for a competent form of internal succession planning. That's a program that you've been looking at and developing specifically, am I right?
That's right. Egon Zehnder has really taken a substantial role in terms of trying to quantify and identify succession planning. So in today's world, not only do we do the traditional executive search, but we also expand that to include succession planning for CEOs as well.
You have one thing in place called a leadership succession strategy. Could you tell us something about that?
Sure. We call it LSS, right? Leadership Strategy Services. So LSS for us is very much a part of trying to identify the future leaders in organizations. It's trying to identify what's the potential of these leaders, and are leaders actually ready to take on the next level within these growing organizations.
I said that this is very much part of your business, but you haven't abandoned the traditional role altogether. There's still a role for the traditional method in your search.
Most definitely, right? I mean, of course. Probably 35% of our revenues today come from what we call LSS, in terms of looking at potential, developing talent to take on future leadership roles. But certainly, there is still a substantial portion in terms of executive search, or locating and identifying CEOs and board members.
So there is still an important need to identify new leaders up and coming.
We would like the idea that companies would suggest that there's a very strong capability internally. We would like them to develop this internally. We would like them to get to the point where that's actually something that they have in place. But unfortunately, many are suggesting that that's not the case today. So what we're trying to do is help many companies build that competency. Rather than just do a search, we're trying to blend in what the needs of our clients are to be more reactive and helpful as a partner.
Right. Now, you're not only limited to upstream and oil services, are you? There's quite a few other business sectors you're involved in.
Oh, absolutely, right. So we've done some initial work within the upstream and oilfield services in terms of some of the surveys, but we go across the entire spectrum, right? Whether it's upstream, oilfield services, midstream, a lot of work in midstream, downstream. There's a lot happening in downstream today. A lot of profitability for some of the refiners, as well as power alternatives, and do a lot of work within private equity as well.
Now, so a lot of these topics, such as upstream, midstream, power, they're all covered here at CERAWEEK. So what are your future plans for CERAWEEK and Egon Zehnder?
Look, I mean, this is our second year partnering with CERA. We held a CEO breakfast last year. We just concluded one yesterday, and it turned out to be a great success in terms of identifying, recognizing the issues associated with talent and the gaps within the energy space. We look at CERA as the Davos of the energy world.
That sounds like a pretty good way of summarizing CERAWEEK. So Mr. Goodman, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
CERAWEEK On Demand. Thank you too for watching, and you can see more of these interviews at CERAWEEK On Demand.